Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Today we'll start reading about our dear Prophet, the Prophet Ibrahim AS. The Prophet Ibrahim AS was born in a village called Ur in Iraq. He believed in Allah since his childhood. When he grew up, Allah made him a prophet. The people in the Prophet Ibrahim AS' village did not pray to Allah. They prayed to stones and statues. One day, all the village people went to the market. The Prophet Ibrahim took a hammer and broke the statues one by one, but left the bigger statue with hammer around its neck. When the people came back to the village, they discovered it to their horror. The village people shouted at Ibrahim. They knew that this was his act. They held him by his hands and legs and threw him into a fire. Allah loved the Prophet Ibrahim a lot. How could Allah let wicked people harm Ibrahim? Allah said to the fire, "Be cool," and a means of safety for Ibrahim. The fire obeyed Allah and became cool and peaceful. It did not burn the Prophet Ibrahim at all. He was saved. The sons of the Prophet Ibrahim AS. The Prophet Ibrahim did not have any offspring. He traveled from one village to another and told the people about Allah. He and his wife Sarah once traveled to Haran and then to Palestine. Then from Palestine he went to Egypt. In Egypt, the Prophet Ibrahim AS married an Egyptian lady whose name was Hajra, and from her a son was born who was called Ismail AS, who later became a prophet. One day, angels called on the Prophet Ibrahim and told him that her first wife, Sarah, will also bear a son. When Sarah came to know, she could not believe her ears. For long she had wanted a son. Sarah and Ibrahim had become old, but Allah blessed them with a son at old age. They named their son Ishaq, who also became a prophet. Thus Allah blessed the Prophet Ibrahim with two sons, the Prophet Ismail and the Prophet Ishaq. Allah's command. One day, after the birth of his son Ismail, Allah told the Prophet Ibrahim AS to go to Arabia with his wife Hajra and Ismail. Immediately, the Prophet Ibrahim, along with his family, set off for Arabia. They traveled for many days. They climbed high mountains. They crossed deep valleys. In the end, they reached a great desert. After a while, they reached a little valley. The Prophet Ibrahim AS and Hajra and little Ismail got down from the camels. The Prophet Ibrahim said to Hajra, "You stay here, keep Ismail with you. I have to go back." His wife protested and said that how she would manage all by herself in this valley. Ismail was only an infant and the valley looked barren without any other human beings present there. But the Prophet Ibrahim turned around and went away, saying that this was the order of Allah which he was following. If this is the will of Allah, so be it. There will be good in this for us, thought Hajra. When the Prophet Ibrahim reached some distance, he turned around and prayed to Allah to keep Hajra and Ismail safe and sound in the valley. The miracle of ZamZam. Hajra and Ismail were alone in valley where the Prophet Ibrahim had left them. Suddenly, Ismail started to cry. He was thirsty. Hajra put Ismail on the ground and went looking around for water. Hajra looked for water in the valley. She could not find any well. There were no wells in the valley. She ran here and there. There was no water anywhere. Hajra tried again. She ran between the hills of Safa and Marwa. She looked again for water. She was very afraid for her son. There was no water anywhere. She ran back to Ismail. Ismail was lying on the hot sand. He was crying. He was kicking his legs in the sand. And then there was a miracle. There was a hole in the sand near his feet, and there was water in the hole. It was a spring. Thanks be to Allah. Hajra cried with joy. She took some water in her hands and gave it to her son. The spring was later called ZamZam. The Great Sacrifice. One night, the Prophet Ibrahim AS was ordered by Allah to sacrifice his son. The next day, the Prophet Ibrahim called Ismail. He said, Ismail, I had a dream last night. Allah wants me to sacrifice you. Ismail was not afraid. He loved Allah very much. The Prophet Ibrahim AS and Ismail left Makkah. They went to the valley of Mina. Ismail lay down on the ground. The Prophet Ibrahim stood next to him. He picked up the knife. He was ready to obey Allah by sacrificing his son. At this moment, the angel Jibril appeared. Allah sent the angel Jibril with a ram to be sacrificed instead. In this way, Ismail was saved. Ibrahim and Ismail thanked Allah. Allah was pleased with the readiness of Ibrahim to sacrifice his beloved son. Allah was so happy that He commanded the believers to observe this day as Eid al-Azha, or the Feast of Sacrifice.